All right, the essential question for today is, if we're given 1 0, how do we use that to factor and find the other zeros? This is day 6. All right, well, here's how you do it. We're going to use synthetic division. And if we're given that 3 is a 0, then the way synthetic division works is we're going to start off with a box. And the 0 is what goes in the box. So I'll definitely put a 3 in here. Sometimes we're given a factor, like x minus 3. And if you're given a factor, just understand that what we want here is a 0. So you'd have to, do the opposite, or basically, really, we're setting this equal to 0, and we're solving like this. But anyway, we were given the 0, so let's go from there. Then we put the coefficients. So this is 1, 3, negative 34, and 48. All right, you sort of skip a line, draw a line, put a box. Okay. So the way synthetic division works is whatever we get in this box is going to be the remainder. Because this is a 0, the remainder better be 0. Start by bringing down this 1, and then we multiply. 1 times 3 is 3, and then we add. 3 plus 3 is 6. And then we repeat. 6 times 3 is 18. Okay, and then negative 34 plus 18, that's going to be negative 16. And then negative 16 times 3 is negative 48. And that makes 0, as we knew. Okay, so what we have here are coefficients of a trinomial. So in order to factor like we want to, we need to put the variables back into this trinomial. So this must be the constant, this must be the x term, and this must be the x squared term. So what we have here is x squared plus 6x minus 16. All right, that's the trinomial that we got. All right, now this 0 that we were given, a 0 of 3, is also going to tell us one of the factors. Okay, and I was kind of doing it up there, but this positive 3, 0, would only come from a factor of x minus 3. Okay, so it's we're working backwards a little bit. So far we've taken this cubic polynomial and we have factored it as x minus 3 times this trinomial. So far so good, but we want to keep going if we can. If we can factor this trinomial further, we must. So I'm going to keep the x minus 3, sort of bring that down. But I'm going to see if I can factor this red trinomial. X squared can only be x times x. Let's see, 16. First thing that pops in my head is 2 times 8, because 2 times 8 is 16. Of course, inner we have 2x, outer we have 8x, and I'm trying to get a middle, I'm trying to get a middle of positive 6x. So to get a positive 6 out of this, I would need a negative 2 and a positive 8. So there's my negative 2, and here's my positive 8. Check one last thing. Negative 2 times positive 8 is negative 16, so everything is looking good. So that means I have now factored this correctly. So I'm just going to copy these factors over here, and this is the factored form of this original polynomial. So this is the factored form, and now I want to say what the all of the zeros are. So x plus 3 would give us a 0 of 3. All right, now of course that's the one that I was given in the first place, but still let's list it. X minus 2 is going to give us a 0 of positive 2. Okay, and x plus 8 is going to give us a 0 of negative 8. Now, please understand, sometimes kids just say, oh, so it's the opposite. And sure, that's working fine right now, but what if it gets more complicated? So I just want to make sure you understand that what we're really doing when we find these zeros is we're setting these factors equal to 0. So I'm really doing x minus 3 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0, and x plus 8 equals 0. And when I solve these, that's how I'm getting the zeros. What am I doing? And you'll see later that sometimes it's important to think of it this way. Okay, so this is where these three zeros are truly coming from. I mean, if you can do it in your head, that's fine. But I speak the truth at all times. So looking at number 2, let's do it again. By the way, if you have a pencil in your hand, shame on you. Okay, put the pencil or pen down. Do not copy off of me. Watch the video to help you learn it, but then go back and do it yourself. That's how you learn. Okay, of course the real cheaters are not watching the video at all. They're just copying answers off the answer sheet. But they'll be sorry when the test comes. Alright, so negative 6 is a 0. So there's my negative 6 in the box. Coefficients, 1, 2, negative 20, 24. Okay. Alright, we bring down the 1 and we go for it. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. Together, that's negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 6 is positive 24. Put those together, I get 4. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. And sure enough, I get 0. Look, if it's a 0, I better get 0 when I do the synthetic division. This is a trinomial, just showing the coefficients. So I need to put my variables back. So putting the variables back in, this is x squared minus 4x plus 4. Okay? That last number always has to be the constant. And this negative 6 is going to give us another factor. Okay? This minus 6 comes from a factor of x plus 6. So this is what I have so far, but we shall keep going. So I will keep the x plus 6, but I will try to continue to factor the red trinomial. X squared will only be x times x. Okay, 4 is either 4 times 1 or 2 times 2. I'm thinking 2 times 2 in this case. I need a middle of negative 4x, so that would come from an inner of negative 2 and an outer of negative 2. Also, a negative times a negative is positive, so here you go. So look, we have now factored it completely. So we can just copy this over. Maybe I can even just literally copy it. That always does that. Okay, so this is the factored form. And the zeros, of course, this one is going to give me that negative 6. All right, that's the one we were given in the first place, so no big surprise there. But the other two factors, well, they're both the same. This is going to give me a 0 of positive 2. Now, we don't really need to list the other one again, all right, because it's not really occurring twice. But it's a multiplicity of 2. It's a double. So in fact, rather than listing it twice, let's just make a note to ourselves that this one is a double. All right, double root. All right, let's not list it twice. There are only 2 zeros. Okay, it's just that this one is multiplicity 2. It's a double root. It's repeated. Okay, if you list it twice, I'm not going to mark it wrong or anything. Okay. By the way, if I were to do the graph of this, because this is a double root, remember, because this would be the same thing as having x minus 2 squared. The graph, how should the graph look when it hits this 2? All right, do you remember that when it's a double root, it should be a bounce? So when I do this graph, it should go through -6 and bounce at 2. Should we graph it? Should we take a look at it? I think we should. All right, let's break out our graphing calculator. Okay, this is too much for the TI-30XS multiview. We have to do the TI-84. What? Okay, so I'm just going to type in this whole thing right here. All right, so I've typed it in. Let's take a look at the graph, see what we've got. Okay, and you can see this graph, it's going up and it goes off screen and it comes back down and it goes up again. So it is making that shape like we would expect. You know, it's doing this type of a deal, all right, which we would expect from a cubic. But anyway, sure enough, okay, at the 0 of 2, you see that it's a bounce, just as we predicted. That's a double root. And the other one, the -6, was just a single, so it just goes through at the -6. Okay, I'm just trying to make some connections for you guys on how this all goes together. Anyways, let's move on. We don't have time to do that on every problem. But I thought it was worthwhile to do it once. But I'm going to go a little quicker, otherwise I'm going to be here all day long. So 2 is a 0, so we'll put that in the box. And then the coefficients are 1, -4, -11, 30. Okay, so the 1, you just bring it down. 1 times 2 is 2, that's -2. -2 times 2 is -4, that makes -15. -15 times 2 is -30, and that of course makes 0, which it better have. Turning this back into a trinomial will be x squared minus 2x minus 15. The last one always has to be a constant, so everything else falls in line. Now, the positive 2, 0, must have come from a factor of x minus 2. So far we have this, but we're going to try to factor some more. So let's go. So we have x minus 2, and then see if we can factor this more. X squared will be x times x. 15, I'm thinking 3 times 5. I need a -2 middle, so that will happen if I have a positive 3 and a -5. And a positive times a negative is a negative. So here I have factored it correctly. Alright, so here's my factored form, and my zeros would be positive 2. That's the one we were given in the first place. But then we'll have -3 and positive 5. Okay, so factored form and zeros, there you go. Alright, let's go on to number 4. Alright, the 0 is -2, so that goes in the box. My coefficients are 1, -3, -6, and 8. All right, bring down the 1. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Together, that makes negative 5. Negative 5 times negative 2 is positive 10. Together, this makes 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And, of course, we get 0. Turning this back into a trinomial becomes x squared minus 5x plus 4. All right, just putting the coefficients back in place. And this 0 of negative 2 tells us that we must have a factor of x plus 2. So I have this so far. But I'm going to see if I can factor this more. Okay, so if I take this and try to factor it some more, this is going to give me x times x. All right, 4 could either be 2 times 2 or 4 times 1. But I'm looking at the 5 and I'm thinking the 4 and 1 option is probably going to do it. The middle needs to be negative 5. That will happen if I have a negative 1 inner and a negative 4 outer. Negative 1 and negative 4 make negative 5. Also, a negative times a negative is a positive, so that works out. I can just bring down my x plus 2 from before. So here, this is the factored form. Okay, from this, I have a 0 of negative 2. Okay, that's the one we were given. But I also have a 0 of positive 1 and a 0 of positive 4 from this one. So these are the 3 zeros from this function. Okay, what is next? All right, let's take a look at number 5. We're given a 0 of 1, so let's put that in the box. Coefficients are 1, 7, negative 1, negative 7. Okay, so bring down the 1. 1 times 1 is 1. That's 8. 8 times 1 is 8. That's 7. 7 times 1 is 7. That's 0. Writing this as a trinomial, I have x squared plus 8x plus 7. This 0 of positive 1 gives me a factor of x minus 1. So as I go ahead and factor this, x squared can only be x times x. 7 can only be 1 times 7. It's a prime number. Luckily, I can get an 8 out of this. All right, if I have a positive 1 inner and a positive 7 outer, that makes positive 8. And of course, a positive times a positive is a positive. So there, I have factored it. And I will bring down my other factor of x minus 1. So this is the factored form. So this gives me a 0 of positive 1. That's the one we already had. This gives me a 0 of negative 1. And this gives me a 0 of negative 7. Okay, what's next? All right, number 6. The 0 is negative 5. So here we go. Negative 5 goes in the box. The coefficients, 1, 1, negative 17x, and 15. Okay. All right, the 1 comes down. 1 times negative 5, negative 5. Together, that makes negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20. Oh, why did I put the x there? Oopsies. No x. Put these together, that makes positive 3. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. And we better get 0. If I rewrite this as a trinomial, I have x squared minus 4x plus 3. This 0 of negative 5 gives me a factor of x plus 5. So I have factored it so far, but I have not factored it completely, because I will go ahead and factor this trinomial further. X squared will be x times x. 3 will have to be 1 times 3. To get negative 4 out of it, and in my mind I'm thinking inner 1x, outer 3x. Together, if they were both negative, like negative 1 and negative 3, that would make negative 4x. So there's my negative 1 and my negative 3. Also, a negative times negative is a positive, so that's just great. So we factored it, and I bring down my x plus 5 as well. So this is the factored form. I'm just going to put it over here. X plus 5 gives us a 0 of negative 5. That's the one we already had. X minus 1 gives us a 0 of positive 1. And x minus 3 gives us a 0 of positive 3. Okay, 2 more, I do believe. For number 7, they give us a 0 of negative 1. So negative 1, and then let's see, the coefficients are 1, 4, negative 1, negative 4. Okay. Bring down the 1. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Together, this makes 3. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Together, that makes negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4, which of course makes 0. Putting this back as a trinomial will give us x squared plus 3x minus 4. Using the negative 1 that we were given in the first place, we know that there is a factor of x plus 1. So I factored it this much so far. Let's factor the trinomial further. So x squared, that's x times x. All right, 4 could be 2 times 2 or 1 times 4. But looking at the 3, I'm thinking 1 times 4. Let's see, to get a positive 3, because inner I have 1x, outer I have 4x. I'm trying to get a positive 3 middle. I will get a positive 3 if I have a negative 1 and a positive 4. So there's my negative 1 and my positive 4. Also, negative times a positive is a negative, so that's working out. So that tells me that I factored it right. And we will simply bring down the x plus 1 that we got from the original 0. And this is the factored form. I'm just going to copy it over there. So my zeros will be negative 1, positive 1, and negative 4. Okay, last one. Okay, once again, the 0 is negative 1, so I'll put a negative 1 in here. The coefficients are 1, 2, negative 11, and negative 12. Bring down the 1. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Put these together, I got positive 1. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Put them together, I've got negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 1 is positive 12, and that gives me 0. All right, these are the coefficients of a trinomial. So the trinomial is x squared plus x minus 12. Okay, the original 0 of negative 1 will give me a factor of x plus 1. So I have already factored it one level, but I need to continue by factoring the trinomial. So x squared will factor as x times x. 12, all right, I'm looking at 12 and I'm thinking that is either going to be 1 times 12, 1 times 12, or it's going to be 2 times 6, or it's going to be 3 times 4. All right, that's it. But looking at the middle of positive 1, I'm thinking 3 times 4 is going to be the 1. All right, because that gives me 3x inner and 4x outer. So if I want a positive 1 middle, I need the 3 to be negative and the 4 to be positive. That'll give me positive 1. So there's my negative 3 and there's my positive 4. Also, a negative times a positive is a negative, so that's working out. All right, and I'm just going to bring down the x plus 1 factor. So this is my factored form. All right, so I'm just going to literally copy it and bring it over here. Okay, from this, I get that 0 of negative 1, all right, that they gave us from the start. From this, I get a 0 of positive 3, and from this, I get a 0 of negative 4. All right, that is it for this lesson. I really hope you're not just copying off of me, all right? Make sure that you're doing this on your own, guys. I hope this has been helpful. I will see you on the next video.